People spend their lives chasing assets, but few realize some of those assets are what keep them poor, stupid, and tired. By the time you're 60, you should own less nonsense, not more. You should be lighter, sharper, freer, not buried under things that look smart at 40 and rotten at 60. The problem is most people never sell the junk in their mental or financial portfolio. They cling to the comfortable, the familiar, and the foolish. I've seen men hold on to bad stocks, bad businesses, and bad habits for half a century, and then wonder why life turned into a long, slow decline. Let me tell you something blunt. Wealth is not about what you own. It's about what you don't own anymore. Every fool wants to add. The wise man subtracts. The road to wisdom is a process of selling, not buying. Selling the illusions, the pride, the obligations that no longer pay a dividend. I learned this the hard way. Back in 1962, I had a portfolio full of promising companies, tiny cigar butts with one puff left. I thought I was clever buying cheap junk. It looked brilliant on paper until I realized all I'd done was fill my head with distractions and my time with garbage. The money wasn't the real cost. The real cost was attention. And attention is the rarest capital you'll ever have. So if you want to get rich, or at least stay sane by 60, start selling. Not just stocks or real estate, but the invisible stuff too. Your envy, your ego, your fantasies of making it big next year. Most people hoard ideas the same way they hoard junk, because throwing them away would mean admitting they were wrong. And humans hate being wrong more than they hate being broke. The best investors and the best people are those who've learned to let go early. They sell their mistakes fast. They sell their pride faster. Buffett and I didn't get rich because we bought brilliant things. We got rich because we didn't hold on to stupid ones. We learned the discipline of detachment. So here's the truth. If you're over 50 and still carrying around the same illusions you had at 30, you're not an investor, you're a hoarder. Over the next few parts, I'll show you 10 assets you must sell before 60. Each one looks valuable on the surface, but underneath, it's quietly draining your wealth, your judgment, and your time. You can call this portfolio cleanup, or you can call it what it really is, survival. Because by the time you reach 60, the world doesn't reward what you had. It rewards what you've finally had the sense to let go of. Now, let's start liquidating. Most people spend their whole lives chasing safety. The tragedy is they confuse safety with comfort and comfort with wisdom. When you're young, safe assets sound like a good idea. The house, the pension plan, the bonds, the illusion that something stable will protect you from life's chaos. But here's the truth. Nothing is truly safe if you don't understand it. And most people don't understand what they own. They buy a house with a 30-year mortgage and call it an asset. In reality, it's a 30-year promise to stay scared of losing your job. They buy government bonds and pat themselves on the back for being prudent. Then inflation quietly eats them alive. Safety, my friend, is not what the brochure says it is. In my lifetime, I've seen safe banks fail, safe companies rot, and safe currencies collapse. Ask anyone who lived through 1973 or 2008. The world doesn't owe you safety. It only owes you reality. The only truly safe asset is competence. And the only way to get competence is to spend decades learning what not to do. Most people can't handle that. They want shortcuts. They want set it and forget it. They want the myth of effortless returns. When I was young, I watched people in Los Angeles line up to buy can't-lose real estate. Then interest rates doubled, and the same people couldn't sell their houses for half the mortgage. Safety vanished overnight, along with their confidence. You can't outsource judgment. Not to a broker, not to a government, not even to Warren Buffett. If you don't know why you own something, you're gambling, not investing. The irony is, Most people cling to these safe assets precisely because they're afraid of volatility. But the real risk isn't volatility, it's ignorance. And ignorance compounds faster than interest. I once told someone, the desire to avoid all pain is the quickest way to guarantee it. The same applies to money. The investor who can't stand temporary losses ends up guaranteeing permanent ones. So if you're heading towards 60, ask yourself, what safe asset am I still clinging to that's really just comforting me, not protecting me? Maybe it's a house that drains your cash flow. Maybe it's a fund you've never analyzed. Maybe it's a fantasy that the system will take care of you. Whatever it is, sell it mentally first, financially next. Free your attention from things that promise peace but deliver paralysis. You don't need to predict the future to survive it. You just need to stop lying to yourself about what's safe. Because safety, in the end, isn't a product. It's a skill. And if you haven't built it by 60, no portfolio on earth can save you. Debt is like oxygen. You don't notice it until you're choking. And by the time most people realize it, it's already too late. I've never met a person who became truly free while owing someone else. Not mentally, not financially, not morally. The world is filled with people who think they use debt wisely. That's what every drunk says about his next drink. In my younger years, I watched brilliant men go broke because they couldn't stand the idea of moving slowly. They wanted to leverage up. They thought the bank's money was their friend. It's not. Debt is a silent partner that wants your peace of mind first and your assets later. Buffett and I never built Berkshire on borrowed money. We could have grown faster. We didn't care because we understood something simple. Leverage makes good times look better than they are and bad times fatal. I remember the crash of 1973. Every fool who thought he was a genius with borrowed money learned what gravity feels like. You can't compound anything when you're too busy digging yourself out of a hole. The dumbest sentence in finance is, it's manageable. That's what people say right before it isn't. Personnel debt is even worse. It's the tax you pay for impatience. The car loan, the buy now, pay later, the mortgage that eats every raise you ever get. It all adds up to one thing, you working for the bank, not yourself. You can't call yourself independent if your lifestyle depends on tomorrow's paycheck. That's not freedom. That's servitude with better furniture. When you're young, a little debt feels like leverage. By 60, it feels like a chain. And the problem is most people get used to the weight. They mistake numbness for normalcy. I've seen men in their 60s still paying off toys they bought in their 30s. Boats, vacation homes, investments they never really used. They spent their best decades working for interest instead of compounding it. If you want to get older without getting poorer, sell the illusion that debt is a tool. It's a drug. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe. Now, I'm not saying never borrow. I'm saying never depend. Debt should be a bridge, not a home. And you should cross it quickly, with your eyes open and your pockets full. By 60, every dollar you owe should bother you more than every dollar you earn excites you. That's how you know you're thinking clearly. I once said, if you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money. I'll add to that, if you can't live without credit, you're not controlling either. Sell your debt before it sells you. You'll sleep better, and sleeping well beats living rich on borrowed time. Some businesses are like children. You love them too much to admit they'll never grow up. I've seen entrepreneurs cling to dead companies for decades, bleeding time, money, and sanity, because they can't stand the thought of calling it quits. Let me be blunt. The graveyard of capitalism is full of men who believed in their business. Belief is not a strategy. Cash flow is. I learned that in the early years when I ran my own law firm. The work was fine. The money was decent. But every day I felt my energy being siphoned away. It wasn't building anything scalable. and it certainly wasn't compounding. So I did something most people can't stomach. I sold the damn thing, walked away from the safe career, and never looked back. That decision made me richer than any legal practice ever could, because it freed me to invest in businesses that didn't depend on my time. Most people confuse owning a business with being free. In reality, they've just built themselves a job with nicer stationery. If your business can't function without you, you don't own it, it owns you. I once said that a lot of hard work goes into creating a business that's barely worth having. That's especially true when ego is involved. People pour their lives into an idea simply because walking away would bruise their pride. But the market doesn't care about your feelings. It only rewards competence and efficiency. Buffett and I saw countless CEOs in the 1970s holding on to failing divisions. They'd say, "We just need one more quarter to turn it around." They said that every quarter, right up until bankruptcy. Denial is not a turnaround plan. If you're over 50 and still propping up a dying business because it might work someday, you're not an entrepreneur, you're a hostage. Sell it, shrink it, kill it, but for God's sake, stop worshiping it. A business that eats your health, your marriage, and your sleep isn't an asset. It's a parasite, and parasites don't negotiate. People always ask me, how do you know when to let go? Simple. When the effort no longer compounds financially or mentally, when every dollar you put in returns a headache instead of growth. The best businesses are like flywheels. They keep spinning even when you're not pushing. If yours stops the moment you take a vacation, you're not running a business, you're running on fumes. There's no glory in persistence if it's applied to stupidity. And there's no shame in selling something that stopped making sense. The longer you cling to the wrong thing, the less time you have for the right one. So before 60, clean house, sell the business that's eating you alive, and invest that energy, your most valuable capital, into something that compounds without consuming you. Remember, success isn't about how much you can hold on to. It's about how fast you can let go when holding on stops paying. For most people, the biggest trap they ever step into has 4 walls, a roof, and a 30-year mortgage. They call it the American dream. I call it a very expensive sleep aid. Now, don't get me wrong. Owning a home isn't stupid. Owning too much home, that's stupid. Especially when you convince yourself it's an investment. I've watched middle-class people spend their entire working lives paying for square footage they don't use to impress people who don't visit. They end up asset-rich, cash-poor, and exhausted. The house appreciates, sure, but so do the taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, and the illusion that you're doing well. Every decade or so, the same story plays out. In 1989 and 2008, and it'll happen again. People borrow up to their eyeballs, prices collapse, and suddenly that safe asset becomes a cement anchor. It's a funny thing. People will sell a bad stock in a panic, but they'll keep a house that's ruining their finances out of pride. They don't want to downgrade. They'd rather stay broke in a big kitchen than free in a smaller one. I once told a young investor, the goal isn't to own more things. It's to need fewer. A simple home that lets you live comfortably and invest the rest beats a mansion that owns your soul. Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958. It's not because he couldn't afford more, it's because he didn't need more. He understood that status doesn't compound. Most people never figure that out. They think comfort is progress. They call debt equity. And they mistake lifestyle inflation for success. I've seen families reach their 50s with beautiful homes and empty accounts. They look rich from the sidewalk and broke on the inside. Their house isn't an asset, it's a liability they decorate every weekend. Here's a test. If your home costs you more than it earns you peace of mind, sell it. That doesn't mean become a minimalist monk. It means stop feeding the ego that lives in your mortgage statement. The real home you need at 60 is liquidity. flexibility, the ability to move, adapt, and breathe when life shifts. A big house locks you into a small life. Every extra room becomes a reason not to change. And when you're 60, rigidity is fatal. I'm not telling you to rent forever. I'm telling you to think like an owner, not a collector. A house should serve your life, not define it. People like to say, home is where the heart is. Maybe. But for too many, it's also where the money goes to die. So before 60, sell the illusion that your house is your wealth. It's not. It's shelter. The real asset is freedom, and you can't refinance that. Most people stay in their careers long after the returns have peaked. They call it loyalty. I call it inertia. A career, like an investment, has a compounding phase and a decline phase. The tragedy is that few recognize the curve until it's already bending downward. I've seen executives in their 50s clinging to jobs that drain their health and their dignity. They tell themselves they're not ready to retire. But what they really mean is they're afraid to let go of their identity. The paycheck becomes a narcotic. And like any addiction, it blinds you to the cost. If your career no longer teaches you, challenges you, or scales with your competence, it's no longer an asset. It's dead weight. The smart move isn't to squeeze the last drops of relevance out of an old position. It's to pivot your energy into something that compounds without your constant grind. That's why Buffett and I never romanticized busy. We preferred being useful. Big difference. The world is full of people working hard at the wrong things. They think motion equals progress. But at 60, the clock stops forgiving that kind of stupidity. When I left law, everyone thought I was crazy. Why throw away a solid career, they asked. Because it wasn't solid, it was stagnant. And stagnation compounds backward. I chose leverage of intellect over leverage of hours. That's how you escape the treadmill. You stop mistaking effort for strategy. If you're approaching 60 and your job still owns your mornings, your moods, and your mind, you've sold the most valuable thing you had time for. The least durable currency there is approval. The idea that you must keep climbing the same corporate ladder forever is one of the dumbest delusions modern society ever sold. It's built to benefit employers, not employees. And the higher you climb, the harder it is to see how absurd it all looks from below. There's a difference between quitting and reallocating. When a stock stops performing, you sell it. When a career stops compounding, you pivot. Same rule, different ticker. Your 60s should be a decade of leverage, not labor. By then, your mind should be working harder than your back. And if you've played your cards right, your money should be working harder than both. But that only happens if you sell the illusion of security early enough. If you wait until the world tells you to leave, it's too late. You should already be 2 steps ahead, mentally unhooked and financially independent. I've never admired a man who worked himself to death for a pension. I've admired the ones who had enough clarity to stop when they still had something left worth living for. So before 60, look hard at your career. If it's no longer teaching you, inspiring you, or freeing you, it's probably eating you. Sell it before it sells you. Because the cruelest bankruptcy isn't financial. It's spending your last decades doing work that stopped making sense years ago. By 60, your real net worth isn't in your bank account. It's in the people you still choose to answer the phone for. Most people never learn that friendships compound the same way money does. The right ones make you wiser, calmer, and richer in judgment. The wrong ones make you tired, cynical, and distracted. I've spent a lifetime watching intelligent men make dumb social investments. They keep toxic friends because we've known each other forever. That's not loyalty. That's inertia disguised as virtue. Bad company is like bad leverage. Works slowly, then all at once. A stupid friend can ruin you faster than a market crash. Why? Because they waste something more valuable than money or attention. Attention is finite. Waste it on the wrong people, and you'll end up broke in wisdom. Even if your portfolio looks fine on paper. I once told a student, if you're constantly cleaning up someone else's mess, you're not a friend, you're unpaid emotional labor. At 60, that's an asset you can't afford to carry. There's a reason Buffett and I surrounded ourselves with rational, decent people. It wasn't just for comfort, it was for survival. Envy, dishonesty, or chronic incompetence are contagious. Hang around it long enough, and you'll start normalizing it. You can't stay rational in an environment that rewards drama. And you can't stay focused if every conversation is about nothing that matters. When I was young, I thought intelligence was rare. When I got older, I realized character's rarer. You can find bright people everywhere, but finding one who keeps promises, avoids envy, and doesn't waste your time, that's gold. So sell the friendships that drain you. Sell the ones that always need rescuing. Sell the ones that mistake your patience for permission. You don't owe anyone access to your peace of mind. By 60, you've earned the right to prune your social portfolio ruthlessly. And don't fool yourself. You are the average of the people you spend time with. If your friends are broke, angry, or perpetually unlucky, sooner or later, you'll start mirroring them. People underestimate how much emotional drag affects decision making. You can't think clearly when your days are filled with noise. Every bad friend is like a bad stock. It costs you quietly until one day it wipes out years of gains. Choose companions who remind you of your values, not your vices. People who challenge your thinking without poisoning your mood. Those are the compounding friendships, the kind that keep paying dividends long after money stops mattering. At 60, your time is the scarcest asset you have left. Spend it like it's cash. Audit who gets it. And remember, you don't need more friends. You need fewer, better ones. Because a clean social balance sheet will make you richer than any investment ever could. If I had to name one asset that destroys more wealth than debt or stupidity combined, it's pride. It's the most expensive emotion in the human portfolio. People think pride is confidence. It's not. Confidence listens. Pride argues. You'd be shocked how many people stay broke just to avoid looking wrong. They double down on bad decisions because admitting a mistake feels worse than losing another 50%. I've seen investors ride terrible stocks straight into bankruptcy just to protect their ego from saying, I was wrong. That's pride. And pride compounds at negative interest. In the 1970s, Buffett and I bought companies that looked cheap but were actually garbage. We learned humility the expensive way. The market doesn't care about your self-image. It punish self-deception. Once we stopped trying to prove we were smart and focused on simply being right, everything changed. Pride is the invisible tax on intelligence. It takes your best ideas and turns them into liabilities. When you're young, pride feels like armor. By 60, it's dead weight. You carry it around, and it blocks every form of learning. The older I got, the more comfortable I became saying 3 words most people choke on. I don't know. It's the most liberating phrase in the English language. People love to sound certain, especially in finance. They'll predict markets, currencies, elections, anything that makes them look insightful. It's nonsense. Nobody knows the future. But pride demands the illusion of control, and that illusion costs fortunes. Pride also keeps people stuck in careers, relationships, and lifestyles that stopped working years ago. They don't want to start over. They don't want to look small, so they keep pretending. But life isn't a performance. It's arithmetic, and arithmetic doesn't care about your ego. If 2 + 2 = 4, then admitting 2 + 2 = 5 is stupid, no matter how loud you say it. I once said it's not supposed to be easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. No, that applies to humility too. It's hard to look foolish in the short run, but it's the only way to stay wise in the long run. The irony is, humility is the ultimate competitive advantage. It keeps you curious. It keeps you improving. And it keeps you from blowing yourself up when you start believing your own press. At 60, you shouldn't be defending your old brilliance. You should be updating it. Selling your pride is like clearing fog from your windshield. Suddenly, you can see what's really in front of you. Every decade, you should ask yourself, what am I still clinging to because I don't want to look stupid? That question will save you more money than any analyst report ever will. Remember, the market, like life, doesn't reward pride. It rewards adaptability. Sell the pride that keeps you poor financially, intellectually, and emotionally. You'll find that humility pays a higher dividend than arrogance ever did. Most people spend the first half of life trying to look successful and the second half trying to undo the damage. They buy cars they don't need, clothes they rarely wear, and houses that impress no one worth impressing. All in the name of living well. But here's the ugly truth. Luxury is just a tax on insecurity, and it compounds faster than your portfolio ever will. Every upgrade seems small at first, the nicer watch, the slightly bigger house, the reward vacation. But lifestyle creep is a parasite with perfect manners. It grows quietly while convincing you it's progress. I've seen plenty of rich men become prisoners of their own success. They can't downsize without embarrassment, can't rest without guilt, can't say no without explaining themselves. That's not wealth. That's slavery with better wallpaper. Buffett and I always lived well below our means, not because we loved frugality, but because we loved independence. Independence is the only reason to bother getting rich in the first place. Yet people keep confusing spending with living. They measure their lives in brand names and square footage instead of freedom and time. A man who needs every dollar to maintain his image is poorer than one who sleeps soundly with modest means. If your expenses rise every time your income does, you're not compounding wealth, you're compounding anxiety. When I was young, I made decent money as a lawyer, but I knew every extra dollar of lifestyle was a chain around my future. So I invested instead of inflated. That single habit changed my trajectory more than any big win ever could. If you're approaching 60 and still chasing a richer image,